Hello and welcome to part 1 of the 4.4 climate change notes for DP biology. So you can see here our essential idea up the top is that our concentrations of gases in the atmosphere are affecting the climate's experience at the Earth's surface. So if I look down below, I have these two images. The one on the left here is very blue clearly. The one on the right is very red clearly. And then if I look down at the bottom description, so in here, it says that on the left, that represents from 1880 to 1889. And on the right, that picture represents 2000 to 2009. And then the colors here are, we can see from our scale down here, are the temperature anomalies. So blue colors indicate colder, and red colors indicate warmer than average. So on the left, you can see that temperatures were a little bit even lower than normal on average. And on the right, we see that they're a lot warmer. So that shows us that over time, the climate has become a lot warmer than it was previously. All right. So our understandings, applications, and skills, as always. So, carbon dioxide and water vapor are the most significant greenhouse gases. So, what is a greenhouse gas? Well, greenhouse gases refer to any gas in the atmosphere that retains heat. Any gas that retains heat in the atmosphere is considered a greenhouse gas. So, the ones that have the largest effect are carbon dioxide, of course, and also water vapor, which may not be one that comes to mind when you first think of greenhouse gases. Although there are other gases that have an impact. So we have methane and we have oxides of nitrogen. So that's any time that nitrogen is joined together with oxygen in a compound. And so nitrogen oxides are released naturally by bacteria. There's also some man-made production of that as well. But for the most part, the ones that we're going to focus on being man-made are methane and carbon dioxide. So methane is a really important one, and so is carbon dioxide. And the reason that those two are really important ties into 4.3 when we talked about the carbon cycle. And both carbon dioxide and methane are important gases in the carbon cycle. So you can see down the bottom here that greenhouse gases do together make up less than 1% of the atmosphere. So they are a relatively small percentage of the atmosphere overall, but they do have great effects. So, question. Why is the surface of the Earth warmer at night if there is cloud cover? So you may have noticed that nights that have cloud cover tend to be warmer. Those really cold nights in the winter that we experience tend to be very clear nights. And the reason for that is that water is a greenhouse gas. So the water droplets in the clouds retain the heat and re-radiate it back to the surface. So they actually rebound heat back towards the Earth's surface. Why is the surface of the Earth cooler than when there is more cloud coverage? So cloudy days tend to be cooler, right? And the difference for this is because instead of reflecting the heat coming from the Earth in this situation, they are reflecting the heat that is coming in from the sun. Okay, so that heat never actually makes it down to the Earth. So it's important to know that water is a significant factor in greenhouse gases, but clouds are do not have a significant effect on the greenhouse effect. The overall water vapor has some effect, but it's not really significant overall. So the impact of a greenhouse gas depends on two things. So we have numerous different greenhouse gases, but they all have different effects on the environment. And their impact tends to boil down to two properties here. So the first is we have the ability to absorb long wave radiation. So if a gas is really good at absorbing long wave radiation, then it's going to have a stronger impact. So more absorption equals stronger impact. And the second is its abundance in the atmosphere. So if it is more abundant, it is going to have a greater impact. So more abundance equals more impact. And the abundance in the atmosphere is governed by two things. So we have the rate of release, how fast it's produced, and also how long it persists in the environment. So some gases are released or produced relatively quickly, but they do break down over time. So they do not persist in the environment. So for instance, we have the three most important greenhouse gases that we're going to talk about. We have carbon dioxide over here, we have methane over here, and we have water vapor down here. So carbon dioxide is very, very abundant. Okay, so it makes up about 400 parts per million by volume of the atmosphere. That's 0.04%, which sounds like a small number, but for a gas like the size of carbon dioxide, that is a lot of the atmosphere. Methane over here has 33 times the effect of carbon dioxide. So it is really, really good at absorbing long wave radiation. However, it's not very abundant, so it has a lower impact. It also, one of the reasons that it's not very abundant, we'll come back to, is its persistence. It has really low persistence. And water vapor has a really rapid rate of release because there's constantly water vapor being released to the atmosphere through evaporation, but it only remains for a couple of days. So an individual water molecule is going to be evaporated up to the clouds, but then it's going to come back down as rain. Whereas carbon dioxide is going to stay up in the atmosphere for a very long period of time. So the impact of greenhouse gas breaks down into two things: ability to absorb radiation and its abundance in the atmosphere. Methane, really good at absorbing long-wave radiation, but really low abundance. Water vapor, abundant rate of release, but it doesn't persist for very long, even though it's pretty good at absorbing long-wave radiation. Carbon dioxide, high ability to absorb long-wave radiation and high abundance in the atmosphere. So that's why it's the primary one we talk about. It is high in both of these categories. Really good at absorbing long-wave radiation and very abundant in the atmosphere. So how the greenhouse effect works. So we get this this V shape from energy that comes in from the sun. So energy, as we know, is constantly being emitted by the sun. That's what it does. It is constantly emitting energy. About 25% of that solar radiation that's coming towards the Earth is absorbed by the atmosphere. So that is what you're going to see here. It comes in, but it doesn't make it all the way in to the Earth. So it gets reflected out by the outer atmosphere. It might be a little bit easier to see if I make that a different color. So let's go with that one. There we go. So it comes in, but doesn't make it all the way into the atmosphere. So about 75% then makes it through the outer atmosphere and reaches the Earth's surface. So it's coming all the way down and hitting the surface of the Earth. And what happens when it hits the surface of the Earth, as you know from anybody who's tried to walk barefoot on their driveway in the summer, the surface of the Earth absorbs that radiation and re-emits it as heat. So the energy coming in from the sun is short-wave radiation, and you can see that displayed by these waves. So these are really narrow, really short waves. So the surface of the Earth absorbs that short-wave solar energy, and then when it leaves, you can see over here, it is these longer, slower waves. There we go. So it re-emits them at longer waves. Now, why is this important? So over here, we talked about when the energy is emitted from the sun, it is in short waves, so it's coming down in short waves from the sun. And about 75% of that is able to penetrate the atmosphere and reach the Earth's surface. The atmosphere is only absorbing about 25% of that. When it gets re-emitted by the Earth as long waves now, the atmosphere is much better at absorbing those long waves. So now, instead of only absorbing 25% of the short waves, it's absorbing about 85% of these longer waves. So instead of the long waves that are re-emitted from the Earth, instead of them going back out the atmosphere and into outer space, they are caught by the atmosphere and they are redirected back down towards the Earth. So instead of escaping out to outer space, that heat is retained in this inside of the atmosphere, and it passes back to the surface of the Earth, causing warming. Now, basically, if this didn't happen at all of the heat energy that came in would make its way out, and we would basically retain no heat. So this allows the Earth to be relatively warm, which is a good thing for us. We want the Earth to be relatively warm, and the greenhouse effect is a perfectly natural process that happens. However, what happens is the more greenhouse gases there are present up in this layer, the more heat is going to be trapped. So by adding greenhouse gases such as methane and such as carbon dioxide, we are increasing the amount of heat that is trapped, which is what is causing over time the climate to change. So we're changing the amount of heat that stays in the atmosphere, which means that we're also going to be changing the climate. So it says here, if the Earth had no atmosphere, the average surface temperature would be about negative 18 degrees Celsius, which is very, very cold. So it's a really good thing that we have the greenhouse effect, but it's kind of working against us when we add more greenhouse gases. So this is a similar diagram with just a little bit of addition. So we have all this energy coming in from the sun. Some of that solar radiation is reflected by the atmosphere. Some of it makes it all the way down to the Earth's surface. Some of what makes it down to the Earth's surface is reflected out. But a lot of it is kept in. So that stuff that's reflected but kept inside the atmosphere, can't escape back out, is what is going to cause the greenhouse effect. And the primary reason that it is not able to get back out is if I go back here again and we look back at those waves. So I'm going to remove. Oh, apparently I'm not going to remove. So we can see as it comes down from the sun that it's in those short waves. So short wave energy is able to pass through the atmosphere, but this longer wave energy is not. So the short wave stuff passes right through the atmosphere, comes to the Earth's surface, but the Earth's surface then converts it into these longer waves, which cannot then escape from the atmosphere. So that is the really important point to pay attention to there. It's the changing of it from shortwave radiation in from the sun to long wave radiation being re-emitted by the surface of the Earth that holds that heat inside of the atmosphere. And so here on slide 14, there are just a couple of different links that will walk you through this. So I will post these links in the video description. And that is where I'm going to pause for today. We're about halfway through the notes. So that concludes part 1 of your notes, the greenhouse effect. It's really important for you to understand how the greenhouse effect works. So make sure that you understand that it is the shortwave radiation coming in from the sun that passes through the atmosphere, but when it rebounds off when it's absorbed by the Earth's surface, it gets re-emitted as long wave radiation, and then it can't escape the atmosphere. In next video, the second half of your notes, we will talk about how humans are impacting that greenhouse effect. I'll see you next time.